there's a study that shows that you have near zero impact on policy in Washington, D.C. This shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody, but somebody's done a study about it. Startling new political science study from Breitbart, the source here is Breitbart.com, concludes that corporate interests and mega wealthy individuals control U.S. policy to such a degree that, quote, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. Now, that's a lot of qualifying terms for that impact. Minuscule, near zero, and statistically non-significant. That means pretty much nothing.
Right. You're a serf. You're a subject, and the Get Out the Vote campaign is a joke. The idea that, for one, there are like 10 swing states. So when you think about a presidential election, if you're in 80% of the United States, you can stay home. Because you can be certain that you're not even close to making a difference at all.
Well, whoever you elect, whether you elect them or not, the bankers are going to win. The mega corporations are giving money to both sides.
Yeah, that's true.
And devil's advocate here, though, when you're in those swing states, I mean, you still have a say in primaries and stuff like that, but the amount of what it amounts to is next to nothing.
But those primaries are pretty much solved by South Carolina. I mean, consider for a second that by Super Tuesday, it's done. So Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, at that point, you pretty much know who the president's going to be.
Well, if they're not in New Hampshire, I don't want them making political decisions anyway.
There you go.
The startling study titled Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens is slated to appear in an upcoming issue of Perspectives on Politics and was authored by university professors. Noted American historian Alan Lichtman, who highlighted the piece in a Tuesday article published in The Hill, calls the research shattering and says their scholarship should be a loud wake-up call to the vast majority of Americans who are bypassed by their government. Wake up and do what exactly? What are you going to do differently? I mean, if you love liberty, you should move to New Hampshire. That's a real clear plan. But for the rest of everybody, wake up and then what? Vote for the other guy next time around? It doesn't matter if you vote.
I think it really comes down to leaving. What else can you do? In this country, you have the ability to leave. Of course, you have to pay for it because they have exit taxes and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. Or you have the ability to complain. Other than that, this thing is a train rolling down the tracks towards disaster. They've spent everything they've got to the point that they're $17 trillion in the hole. It's not going to get any better. You're not going to wrest the controls from the engineer. It's over.
Yeah, trying to effect the federal government has a terrible track record of success.
All right, so a little bit more here on this story. The people who authored the study said, quote, if policymaking is dominated by powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, then America's claims to being a democratic society are seriously threatened, say they, and the solution they claim is a reinvigorated and engaged electorate. That's right. The reason why the politicians are scumbags and the police state continues to rise is simply because people aren't engaged enough. If only more people voted, that would just change everything. What a ridiculous Pollyanna viewpoint.
The real answer to this problem, Ian, and I'm sick of people not being willing to point it out, is unicorns and fairy dust, okay? And if you click your heels 3 times and say, I wish the other guy was president, then, maybe if you tried this enough times, it might work.
Well, they do claim that they want an engaged electorate.
So research the criminals you're going to vote for. That way you'll know which one's less of a criminal.
I kind of feel like you would get a better choice than sort of the mediocre candidates that we have. I mean, like, if for instance, if you removed the Republican and the Democrat from the, because you got to admit, those are the milquetoast, mediocre candidates that are out there. And then you had just the third-party candidates from which to choose. These are the candidates, by the way, that represent the thoughts and attitudes, by and large, of Americans.
No.
If you look at people's beliefs, and then you rate them towards candidates, towards the political parties, they're not Republicans and Democrats. They're Greens, they're Libertarians by a good stretch, and other sorts of independents.
these are largely like radical views. If you start looking at how people actually look at the society, what they view is everything is a compromise. Everything's gray area. Everything's negotiable, and that's why Republicans and Democrats succeed. Beyond the ballot access laws and stuff like that, people don't want these sort of like extreme or radical views. If your views are far right or far left or far libertarian or far communist or whatever, then people are generally going to be turned off to that, which is why your Republicans and Democrats are so milquetoast, because people take a basket of issues and they're just like, I think that everything is negotiable and this is the negotiation that I would sort of prefer, but if the other guy wins, then that's going to be fine too.
I wouldn't disagree with that statement that they want to negotiate and that sort of thing. But if you look at a person's opinions and you match them towards a political party, they're not, the Republicans and Democrats really, they don't dominate the way they do as in the election. The reason people vote in the presidential elections for Republicans and Democrats is because they believe they can win, which is an incredibly stupid reason to vote. You have one vote, and it doesn't matter who you give that vote to. You're not making a difference as to whether that candidate can win or not. You might as well give your vote to the party that represents you, right? Like if you're a Green, you might as well vote for the Green candidate because when was the last time a Democrat won by one vote?
Well, I'll tell you what. In the election in Suffolk County where I ran for Congress, the Democratic candidate won by like 100 and something votes.
Yeah, that's not too much.
And I spent most of my time attacking the Republican candidate in that case. So there's some. I didn't make the ballot, but I do know a number of people who wrote me in, and there's some suspicion that I may have costed that Republican the election. So I mean, if you're a person who actually wants to effect political change, if you want people to run for office, I mean, there's an argument to be made for voting Republican or Democrat. I don't personally think it's terribly useful.
There's
most
an
of
argument
the time.
to be made if you want to have some kind of impact on politics, that if you love liberty, you should move to New Hampshire, because
I think that's
Washington,
the best
D.C.
solution.
Washington, D.C., you might as well just throw your money down a hole. Just go ahead. Just set it on fire. If you're going to give money to campaigns for people running in D.C., you just might as well torch the cash. But at least here in New Hampshire, you can actually get elected. Freedom-oriented people who would best be described as voluntarists, anarcho-capitalists, are being elected here in New Hampshire as both Republicans and Democrats. That's already happened, and it's happened dozens of times over the last several years. You can talk to the state representatives here in New Hampshire. These people are accessible. When you go to the website and you pull up contact information for these people, it's their home phone number or their cell phone number almost every single time. It's not uncommon in New Hampshire if I want to call a state rep and say, hey, I want you to vote in favor of marijuana legalization, there's a good chance their kid's going to pick up the phone, or the wife, or whoever. And I'll go get my daddy and put the phone down. That's how.
It's not usually daddy. It's usually grandpa, or grandma.
It depends. But anyway, my point being, these people are accessible. They don't have some sort of intermediary. They don't have the aides and the staff to block you from reaching them. They don't even have an office they can go and sit in. They've got a locker at the state house
and a mailbox.
That's it, and they get $100 a year for the effort, plus a small travel stipend, and that's it. So that changes the game in a big way as far as being able to actually talk to these people, persuade them.
Right. It's not a lawyer industrial complex in Concord the way it is in 49 other states and Washington, D.C.
So if you're looking for political success, look no further than New Hampshire, but we'll come back with more, and you can share your thoughts on Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.